Hi, I'm Cindy Pankoff here at my creative place in Fullerton, California, and today I'm going to share with you the very most important thing that was ever shown to me while working with meadow clay, and that is how to condition the wet clay, how to take your scraps or your mistakes and turn them back into beautiful workable clay again. When I first started doing meadow clay, that was not any part of my education. I was told you had one shot and you better get it right because that was it. And it was very intimidating, and it really scared me so much that my hands shook. But I went and took my certification class with Gordon Uehara in Hawaii, and I saw what he did with plastic wrap and a little bit of water and how to turn that back into regular clay, and that for me is when my creativity really went berserk with the meadow clay, because I knew I could redo and redo as many times as I wanted, so I wasn't afraid to experiment, and that's really how my love of meadow clay was able to blossom. So I'm going to share that technique with you as well so that you can feel that same liberation that I did way back when I first started working with the clay. So what I always tell my students is make sure that you always have 2 pieces of plastic wrap when you're getting ready to set up your station. You want to have 2 pieces. One is for the clay that was fresh out of the pack that you're not using at the moment. That clay you don't have to do anything with. You just set it aside in a separate piece of plastic, wrap it up, and set it aside. The other piece of plastic is going to be for all your trimmings, for your mistakes. Whenever the clay has been out and rolled, that's going to go in the second piece of plastic with just a little touch of water, and that's going to help rehydrate it so that you can work that moisture back into it. And that is, honestly, it's the key to everything. So I have here some clay that I'd used previously. I've got a couple separate pieces, and I'm going to take those and combine them. So I've got a little one here and a little one there. I'm going to put those together in one piece of plastic. And the reason we're using plastic is so you don't get clay all over yourself, because that's just going to end up getting washed down the drain. So by combining all those little bits and pieces and just adding just a tiniest little touch of water to it, and then I'm going to fold the plastic over and squish it with my thumb. I'm going to squish it out nice and flat. Open up the plastic, fold it over again, and then squash again. But please notice how I'm working. I'm starting at the fold and I'm working out. That's very important. Otherwise you can trap air in there. If you start sealing it here, then you're going to trap a big air pocket, and then your clay will have air in it. That will definitely cause you problems down the road. Fold it over, smash, smash, smash. Open it up, fold it over. So you want to do that until you've done at least 5 turns. It takes 5 turns for that water that you added to get fully incorporated back into the clay. If you don't do 5 turns, you might be misled into thinking that you need to add more water to your clay, and then you will, and then you'll do a couple of turns. Next thing you know, the clay is just going to turn into mush. So I'm going to keep doing that until the clay is nice and smooth. You don't want to see any splitting around the edges, and you don't want to see any lumps. I'll get more into that in a second. What you're looking for is just really beautiful consistency. You want it to just look like silly putty, where it's just totally perfectly smooth like that. That's how you'll know that the clay is beautiful and ready to go. Some signs to look for to let you know if you need to add more water. When you go to push on it, if the clay doesn't really give, then that means you need to add a little bit of water. Or maybe you'll see cracking around the edges where the clay is just kind of splitting open, then that means you need to add more water. But if you're squishing it like that and you feel or see lumps in it, that does not mean that you have to add water. That means you have to do more squishing. So if I had a lump in here, I would just squish the heck out of it until that little lump ruptured. And then that would allow the moist clay that's next to it to hydrate all the little crispy bits. That's what you do if you have crispies, and then just open it up and keep folding it again. Then all of a sudden it's going to come back to being a really nice consistency. Once you get it back like that, you're good to go. The clay is ready to use, and it'll be just as nice as it was, or maybe even a little better than it was fresh out of the package. One tip I want to give you is even if you rolled out a clay just for a minute, you rolled it out, you textured it, it didn't come out the shape you wanted it to be. You still want to take a separate piece of plastic wrap, throw the clay in there. You might not even need to add water, but you'll need to do a couple of turns with that just to bring the clay back together again. I like to kind of compare this to a croissant. If you think about all those beautiful flaky layers of pastry, the reason that they stay flaky is because they're separated by layers of butter and then they bake, and you end up with those, those lovely layers, which are very desirable in a croissant, but not desirable in our metal clay. The same sort of situation happens if you roll out a piece of clay, which is going to be greased on both sides with your roller or your work surface, and then if you take that clay and fold it over really quick and then re-roll it, you're going to have 4 distinct layers of the clay, and it's not really going to come back together again. The last thing you want is flaky metal clay. So by taking the time to just put it in the plastic wrap, do a few turns so you recondition it and get the surface of the clay so there aren't those distinct layers anymore, that it's nice smooth mass again, then your clay is going to be great and your finished pieces are going to look that much better. So just take some time and make sure that you always condition the clay nicely. If you want to see more about how to take your dry clay, so you have a piece that's been sitting around and you want to turn that back into clay, that's going to be in a separate video. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Cindy Pankoff. My website is www.cpcreativeplace.com. Thank you.